guys, welcome. My name is Leland Baptist. I am a private banker with Lee-Chandler, and today we're going to talk about two awesome things. Talk about the difference between you owning your own asset and also the asset being purchased through or acquired through syndication. Okay? So this is going to be a great time. Now this video is going to be a little longer than most, so I hope you guys are ready for the ride. Here we go. So when it comes to a syndication, what happens here, for those guys who aren't familiar with what a syndication is, essentially is that someone puts together equity for a deal. So in other words, let's say that there's a guy named Bob. He finds a great asset to purchase. Bob wants to purchase the asset, but he gets finance from a bank for, let's say, 80%. And then Bob only has 5% of his own money. So now he has 85% available, but he's going to be short the other 15%. So what happens is that Bob goes around and he is looking for others to basically make up that 15% that he's short. Okay? So they're now putting in money into a hat, essentially, or equity injection into this person's business. Okay? So what happens a lot of times is that the down payment or the equity that will be injected into the purchase of that business or building or that asset, if it's syndicated and you're the person who is giving Bob this money, this is going to be the comparison. Your down payment is going to be partial. It's going to be small or medium. It's going to be somewhere in between because you're not funding the entire deal. So what that means for you, though, is it can give you pride of ownership, knowing that you now own, 5% or 1% or 2% of someone else's project or someone else's investment or asset. Okay. Now, if you own your own asset, it could be the same asset that Bob has, or something different, or something much smaller or much bigger. Then what that means is that you would then be responsible for either all of the down payment or some of the down payment. So over here in a bracket I have the word creative. And so in the video that we have for creative financing, you'll kind of have different ways of how you can spin that to where you can have less equity involved. But for this example, let's pretend that you went ahead and you're doing the full down payment for that business or that asset. Okay? Then next, because if you're syndicating, because you have a partial down payment or a small amount that you're investing, then your equity or your ownership in that business is also going to be small. Okay? And normally what happens is it's normally about less than 5% of the overall amount invested. Okay? And then if you own your own asset, you have 100% equity because it's your own asset. Now, because you are investing essentially into someone else's asset, what happens a lot of times is that your reward is going to be smaller. Okay, and that kind of makes sense because your investment is normally smaller. Okay, your reward is smaller, but normally your investment is smaller. So the buzzword that most people use is somewhere between 6 to 8%. That's what the annual return is for most people who are syndicating different funds. Now, granted, if you own your own asset, bigger, larger, or smaller, then you're going to have somewhere between like a 16% on average or a full return on your investment. Now, velocity. Remember we talked about the importance of making sure that your money is constantly moving and it's also coming back to you on a regular basis. When you're part of a syndication, normally your money is going to be locked up for a series of time. Normally it's like 5 years. And when you receive your check or your return, let's say it's 8%, what ends up happening is that you're going to receive a check for 8% at the end of that fiscal year. Okay? You're not going to receive a monthly check in the mail or anything like that. It's normally for most institutions when they syndicate once a year. Okay? And your money, your equity is going to be locked in that deal for that full time period. So it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, and it could be 20 years. Okay? So When I say for velocity here for syndication, it could be annual or end of completion. End of completion means that normally happens for the businesses. They normally refi out or they sell the business, and so your capital, your equity is going to be locked up until they go ahead and sell or refinance that business. Okay, basically cash you out. Now, if you own the asset yourself, then you're going to have a more frequent velocity of circulation of that cash to be put into your pocket. Some people go ahead and they reinvest that same money and add it into more equity for the business. Others go ahead and they put that money in their pocket for living or to invest into other assets. So more likely when you own your own asset, you have the ability to have what's called monthly access to cash flow or monthly circulation or velocity. And let's talk about control. It's kind of self-explanatory. If you're in a syndication, you don't really have a lot of control. You can talk with your different partners, but you really don't have a lot of controlling interest into the project. Okay, if you do, that's only because you have invested a large amount of equity to have a huge say in what happens in that project or in that acquisition of business. All right. So think about it this way. Let's pretend that if we simplify syndication, that everyone is investing into a crowd fund, okay? And you invest in a crowd fund, and let's say you invest $10,000 into a crowdfunding online. Do you think that the CEO of that business is going to shoot you an email to get your thoughts about whether or not they're going to hire a new a new marketing director for the business? They're not, okay? And it's kind of the same thing there. They're gonna let the business operations be the business operations, and they'll keep you up to date when they send out their annual reports normally. But even then, you really don't have any controlling stake or say what actually goes on the day-to-day operations, unless of course you're Warren Buffett and you own a controlling share enough to make noise. Now, if you own that asset yourself and then you own the asset fully, you have full control. Okay, makes sense. All right. And last but not least, let's talk about something that's very, very important: risk. The reason that you kind of tighten on different ends for syndication is because, keep in mind, most of the time the down payment is partial. You're not funding the full deal. And even if the down payment is being completely funded by just one individual for a syndication, the sponsor normally already has financing for part of it, right? So in this example, we'll talk about the gentleman, who in our syndication example, he already had financing for 80%. So technically, if anything, from an equity standpoint, it would be seen as him having control of 80%. All right, and that's controlling interest. No matter if you're the one who brought 100% of the down payment, well, that's only 20%, but that's only 15%. Okay, so the risk is there's little to no risk based on the capital amount that you've already invested into the syndication. All right, whereas if you actually own your own asset, the risk is exponential. Okay, the risk and the reward is both exponential. But your risk really is going to be your capital invested and also time value of money. So it evens out. Now, here's something that most people don't think about when it comes to the syndication or owning your own asset. And we always suggest that our clients own their own asset. Always own your own asset. And one of the biggest benefits, especially for our clients who are high net worth individuals, is that when you own your own asset, you get the full benefit when it comes to taxes. So if there's a building involved with that business, if it's just an apartment building, you get the full benefit of the appreciation and depreciation of that asset. Okay? So I hope that makes sense, and I will speak with you guys soon.